Welcome to TWAX Talk. This is the podcast dedicated to the headier side of cannabis, whether it's finding out what the dankest new strains are, who's making the best rosin, or diving into the weeds of politics and industry news and what's driving this movement forward. If that sounds like something you're interested in, strap in because we got another great episode for you today. Let's get right into it. Today, James, what are we diving into?
You know, we would be remiss to say something not about the election next week. You know, we've got November 7th rapidly approaching.
Yes. So we are recording this episode on November 1st.
Yeah.
By the time this episode comes out, who knows how long ago the election likely happened. At this point, we don't know who's going to win.
Sorry, November 5th, on November 5th, this November 5th.
Yes.
And we don't. I'm a skeptic when it comes to polling.
Mm-hmm.
So I am, optimistically hopeful that the world is still around by the time this airs. So.
Yes. Yeah. Hopefully that'll be the case. I think either way, there'll probably be something in the United States on fire, but
I'm sure. I mean, there's nothing changes without a good fire.
Other than that, the world keeps spinning, regardless of how terrible our politics are in this country. So,
at least we have something to be happy about in terms of cannabis. Both of the electoral candidates, of the general election and the federal level, the two big names, they're both pro it, which is great. So I think that we're in a good position either way. Debatable on what the long term on that is, from both sides, but either way in cannabis this time we have less to worry about. Now, I don't want it to sound like this is something not to worry about, but we have less to worry about in cannabis, and I'm very thankful for that. It's been an election year, marked with a lot of change, but a lot of support. We've never had in history a presidential candidate come out and say, "I'm supporting legalizing weed," or "That's on my to-do list," or "I think it's a good idea." And even to a states' rights level, one of the candidates, vice president, who's the most against cannabis, or vice president choice, even is state by state supportive. Maybe not be personally supportive, but we look at it from a state by state view. I think we're doing pretty good. And speaking on state by state, one of the more exciting general election voting bits this year is Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I personally grew up in Florida. I lived there until I was about in, fourth, fifth grade. And Florida's an interesting place. It's beautiful. It's got so much tourist potential, gorgeous beaches. I still go back every now and then, and it's a great, great spot. Governance, here or there. I'm not going to comment on that. One of the best parts about this job is I don't have to like one side or the other. However, we're looking at legalization in Florida. Now, Florida's had a pretty robust medical system that continues to grow. The announcements come out of a new dispensary opening almost every week in Florida. So the market's growing. It's run predominantly by, 6 or so pretty big corporations. The biggest, of course, being Trulieve. That'd be, I'd be remiss to mention that.
Yeah.
And they've put a lot of work in a lot of good ways. They've had bipartisan support ads. They've had education campaigns for the elderly, large population in Florida. They've done a lot of good. And on the other side, it's kind of crazy to see the state using tax dollars to fight an issue they don't like, it's a voter-led initiative. To me, that's just not right in any state.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We don't take money from our own coffers because we don't like something that the voters are going to be the ones to decide on. So that leads to, in this campaign, and in Florida in particular, a huge amount of money spent. And I mean, millions, hundreds of millions total for supporting and against. And when you do that, you get a lot of PR generation to sway voters. It's part of the political process of convincing someone to vote your way. And in that way, it's almost framing it like, and I really love this comparison, is what is big cannabis in your mind? If you were to say to somebody, what does corporate cannabis mean? What would that be to you?
Well,
going right into it. Oh yeah. Oh no.
I mean, really, like, you can say to me, it's sort of unfortunate, but silver lining, the clear is corporate cannabis.
No.
Like
Boss does wear a suit, that's for sure.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, our CEO wears suits. Like we have a corporate structure. We have like a HR department. We operate in multiple states. We have to deal with legislators and regulators from all over the country. So I think when people think corporate cannabis, like it is companies like The Clear. But I feel like there's companies like The Clear who we don't just go into a state because we're like, oh, we can go in and make a quick buck and leave. Like we don't enter a state unless we know that we can provide the same quality in every state we go to. And then we have to find a partner in that state because we can't just make our product in Colorado and ship it because of federal law.
Right.
So we find a partner in the state to make our products for us. And if they don't meet our standard, we either find a new partner, or if there's nobody in that state who can meet our standards, we leave that state. And we have had to do that in the past. But in my mind, corporate cannabis always has a negative connotation just because cannabis came from grassroots and now is becoming corporate, which is inevitable with any industry as it grows and really becomes a legal business. Like it's going to corporatize, it's going to consolidate. And I think I've said this so many times, I almost feel like I should just shut up. But like corporatization and consolidation is inevitable with legal cannabis. And I think a lot of people who come from the OG movement side of the industry, where they're in it for the plant and everybody should be able to grow their own and all that stuff, they see legalization really like it can become a detrimental thing where the individual, like if your state doesn't allow you to grow your own, you have to buy from a dispensary. What happens if there's only 5 licensed growers in your state and that's the only people you can buy flower from, and their flower doesn't happen to be that good? You're screwed.
Did we have it better when it was illegal then in some minds? It was I've heard that sentiment that, when it was illegal, it was ours. And I'm going to use that ours because that's what I come from. True in my core, nowadays you look at it as if you're in the legal or illegal side.
Yeah.
It's basically moonshining now. You're producing the same product. And it's unregulated, untested, but there's always going to be a market for that. And when you're not paying your taxes, I consider that just moonshining. Corporate, there's that sentiment where it was almost better when it was illegal because it wasn't controlled by corporate cannabis. I'd have to argue that's a case-by-case basis.
Definitely.
I personally started chasing the legal movement because I wanted to stop getting chased by the police. So, look at it that way. It's, the dissolution of families, the dissolution, the loss of freedom around the plant. That should be the first thing we work on. Now, I think a big misconception in terms of where that OG and that corporate cannabis thing is, and apologies if we're jumping around a bit, but is really, when this is going legal and when this is going to build, do the benefits outweigh the risks? Do the benefits outweigh the change? I think that there's enough OGs still in the space, who have learned business tactics, which has been very hard for a lot of people, and I don't take that away. But if we're not putting people in jail for this anymore, if we are doing that, we are doing a huge lift. This is a huge thing. And unfortunately, in the legalization movement, this with consolidation, that's the way it goes. Now, I do worry about people getting left behind. There's a huge social equity element to this that we have been missing in a rush to focus on the safety aspects and diversion aspects. It's a tough situation to be in because I think that the corporatization of cannabis is the inevitable byproduct. But just like in beer, if you follow prohibition, the end of prohibition, you're having people right afterwards, big beer conglomerates took over. But then the craft beer movement came in, and that gave the average man a way to make some amazing money. And heck, our own governor was one of the first pioneers of that. Or not governor. Well, he was a governor. That was our state representative, Hickenlooper. He was he built Wine Coop Brewing, at a time when there wasn't a lot of craft brewing, and he started that up. And now, did Wine Coop get bigger and have a corporate structure? It's publicly traded, yes. but it's still that core thing. And I think we can keep that. I honestly think we do. There's going to be, of course, people who want your cheap Coors Light and or Miller and something. You go to the store and you're going to get that. But we have an opportunity to set the standards here, and in these changes and in these modernizations, really do a good with this. It needs to be checked, though. I mean, the wellness side needs to be involved. Maybe that's where my brain keeps going back to here, is the wellness side of it. Forgetting where we came from will lose us credibility. I was just talking about this with the C-suites. It was how we approach and how we represent the plant. We're not reinventing the wheel because we're corporate. We are representing where it came from and brought us here. We're doing it for the good of our patients, of our customers. We're doing it for a wellness reason. Those type of things. We're doing it to help and give alternative therapies to people maybe suffering from PTSD and all these conditions that are considered for medical use now. The good that does with veterans. That's one thing. One of the reasons I kind of got into this. So maybe this is an interesting dichotomy. Is the reason I started growing cannabis illegally and was really focused on making this world happen at a great risk, great personal risk, was because of my friends who were in the military. They came back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and they were drinking themselves to death. Absolutely were. They saw and went through some absolute nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
And it just real dark stuff. And they were drinking themselves to death. And I was like, hey, I'm selling weed. I got weed. Do you want, and they're like, yeah, this works great. I don't need a drink. I go, well, you switch for me. And they go, there's no way I can afford that. I go, okay, let me provide it for you. That was the real foot in the door. And I was at that point seeing the good it did and was like, law be damned. I'm going to do what's good. I'm going to give more than I took from this earth. I'm going to give of myself to this cause. And there are people I know, because I'm one of them, that are representing that all the way to high levels. A lot of them are doing a lot of education. A lot of them are doing a lot of work. But we are on the cusp of a great amount of change. And I don't want to take away the work that's been done just to get to Schedule 3 when I myself, I'm looking at it this way. Like when we go to Schedule 3, does everybody think we're just going to stop protesting? Or we're going to stop fighting for the right cause? No, we're going to go, okay, great. Thank you for the Schedule 3. Thank you for the changes.
Yeah.
Well, now we want more. We're not done. We're not going to go home on this. So corporate cannabis, because of its finance, because of its cohesion, has been able to get it up this far. We're going to keep going with this. And they will not, I truly believe this, will not stand in our way. Simply, I got to make one thing clear about the Florida initiative in terms of home grow, because you touched on home grow. It wasn't due to the fact that TrueLeaf, frankly, couldn't care less about home grow. It doesn't affect their, them that terribly much compared to how many people grow, how many people consume. It's simply because in that state, they have a single issue ballot measure rule that if they were to add that, it would violate that and they couldn't run it. You can run a separate piece of legislation on that, and they absolutely, people should. But I don't believe that they're structuring it to say, let's cut out our initial customers. Let's go to that base level. And they might make it difficult for new companies to move in, but what state really doesn't? That's the, and that kind of thing takes political engagement, that takes civic engagement, that takes smart legislature and smart people to do that. And I think we'll get there. We're in a funny moment in history, and maybe we're talking about this a week before the jump, but I am so excited to see how this shakes out because I'm optimistic. I might eat my words later.
Yeah,
but I'm optimistic.
Well,
right now.
I always try to be skeptically optimistic. In that, I mean, you've been in the industry longer than me, obviously. I've been writing about the industry and the plant for a decade at this point. And I mean, I remember saying my freshman year of college, 5 years from now, it's going to be totally legal. Like the movement's moving, like there's so much momentum. Here we are a decade later and still hoping that something's going to change soon. So I'll be optimistic, but I'm always skeptical. But I want to ask a question that might lean into some controversy here.
Oh, spicy.
Well, I'm hoping you'll prove me wrong, actually. So can you name a substance that was originally advertised as being a medicine to be prescribed with medical properties that then turned into a recreational substance where you could simultaneously have it prescribed to you and also just walk into a store and buy it?
Wow. Wow, that's a great question. I mean, in terms of just my history base and my research and focus in my life on substances, it's almost the opposite effect. You know, this stuff is medically created, used and diverted recreationally, and then found to be a societal harm and banned, such as LSD, such as cocaine, such as, you know, various other substances. I mean, even to a degree, heroin, you know, is used in medical settings. And I like the idea. I like the example of LSD. You know, maybe mushrooms is a better one. Actually, let's go to mushrooms. We've had mushrooms around, and in certain countries, even in Japan, they were legal until the 90s. You know, you could buy them off the street, the psychedelic ones, to have a crazy time.
Oh, wow.
Attitudes and laws can change so quickly depending on a situation. In Asia, an issue with drugs goes back pretty far, actually, to and why opium is so controversial there. We essentially subjugated a country with opium addiction. Well, not we, but our, you know, British ancestors. And that can affect the mindset of a people and say, we don't want to be controlled with substances from the outside. So we need to control our society to keep it within a boundary that wouldn't allow us to slip. And with mushrooms, you know, they were used traditionally for thousands of years, you know, and they still are. Some Native American ceremonies, same with peyote, those things like that. They are still allowed to be used for very specific medical use in very small context. If you're a member of a Native American tribe or a church, those are still legal. Lots of rules around it, but still legal. We have never, I think, had something that would be allowed to be recreational. And I could be wrong on this, but my brain is really reaching to say you can use this recreationally, and at the same time, this is also prescribed medicine.
Right. So the point I like to make with that question,
Yeah.
during alcohol prohibition, Winston Churchill had
supply, right?
a doctor's note
Yes.
that prescribed him at least one glass of whiskey with dinner every day when he visited the United States.
During Prohibition.
After Prohibition ended, there was no need for a medical prescription for alcohol.
Right.
Because you could just buy it.
Yeah.
In my mind, medical cannabis was the foot in the door that we needed to get to where we are now, where we could have legal recreational cannabis, where we had to basically say, we need this for medical purposes. Like Winston Churchill said, I need my liquor for medical purposes, right? Alcohol does have some health benefits, you could argue, right?
It's hard to get a prescription for Bud Light, though.
Exactly. So my point is, eventually, I think we are going to have to decide as an industry, is this a medical product or is this a recreational product? I don't think we can have it both ways and expect outside people to take us seriously.
No.
Because they're seeing us say, no, like this is such a life-changing medicine that people need to have access to it, while at the same time saying, if I just wanted to go to the store and buy a joint to get stoned, I should be able to.
You're making a very strong point, and what it will lean to is something that we've, and if we're talking about corporate cannabis, you're kind of doing a perfect segue into the other side of it, which is what's pharma's role in this? Everybody was so concerned that like when it goes Schedule 3, the farmer's going to go, all right, all of the sales of recreational are now illegal. If you want to buy it, you come and buy it from Eli Whitney, you know, Pfizer, Bayer, whatever. And they're just going to say, okay, thanks, bye, and shut down all this. Shut down all the good stuff we've done. They have a big issue with that. And the reason why, when it gets to medical and true medical, it's working in some other countries better than it works here. Here, under the FDA, to qualify as a drug, you have to go through so much extensive research and testing. And remember, these are polydrug compounds. So it's not just saying THC or CBD. We've made those. That's Dronabinol or Marinol and Sativex and those type of things. Those will always be true medicine, and those will be what's given to children. As well they should. That is a true medical need.
Yeah, can't get a joint.
But a joint's never going to be medical. Combustion isn't medical. you can't even, argue that, yes, this is a great idea to smoke this cigarette. I mean, what are we, 1930s doctors with cigarettes,
TWAX Talk is brought to you by TWAX by The Clear. If you're looking for a potent, premium pre-roll experience and you live in a legal cannabis state, head over to the dispensary and ask them if they carry TWAX by The Clear. It is a premium whole flower, never shake or trim, infused pre-roll using the same great flavors you know and love from the Clear brands that they put in their vapes. They infuse that with premium flower, blend it together at the perfect grind size, so you get a potent, slow-burning pre-roll experience that doesn't get clogged up. If you're interested in that, head over to your dispensary and ask for TWAX. And we are back. James was just telling us about that neon pot leaf sign.
The neon pot leaf sign in Athens, Greece, man. I'll tell you, when you walk into a new country and you can see a sign like that and, there's not cops surrounding the store at the moment, you're pretty proud of things and how they've developed. I went in and immediately had to talk to the guy, and luckily he spoke great English. This guy named Christo, lovely, lovely gentleman. And his thing was, I'm like, what are you selling here? What do you have? And he's like, oh, we've got THCP vapes, we've got THCJD joints, we've got these hemp flowers, yada, yada, yada. And I'm asking him, like, so, what is this leading to? Like, how are you going to get full THC products here? And he goes, oh, this is what we know. This is our camel's nose under the tent, to show that these other cannabinoids and this use essentially almost doesn't matter what the chemical compound was. It was just that this can exist in society without it being a menace.
Yeah.
And they're like, once they see that, and they are seeing that, Greece is embracing this distributor nature of being kind of the endpoint of a lot of these products and then shipping them out to the rest of Europe, as they kind of run their own state-by-state model. And he's just like, we're just doing what medical was in America, which is just the nose under the tent. We got to get this culturally accepted. We got to get that perception of the OG and of the unsafe nature and all of that removed by being IDing in a store, by testing our products, by things around that nature. And to bring it back, kind of the first bit of the conversation here, I think that's what we can do as an industry, as corporate cannabis, is we can set up those structures, we can set up those SOPs, we can set up those markets, and we can invest in research and policy engagement and work around that nature. So, it's not the end all be all. I think there's room for everybody on the boat, essentially. This is a big boat. We're fighting over like 2 seats on right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think if there's anything we've learned over the past decade of legalization is we can't sit around waiting for the federal government to make this happen for us.
Absolutely not.
I honestly, part of me believes federal legalization will happen after 50 states legalize recreationally on the state level.
Yes.
And then the federal government will be like, okay, we'll make it legal now. That's kind of how I'm seeing it. And honestly, I kind of would prefer that way. I'm a states' rights person, I think there needs to be federal oversight in some cases, but in most instances, just like a state controls their alcohol, I think states should control their cannabis too. And
there's something to be said. The only thing that I would like if we could just make a wish list right now, what I actually want the federal government to do, that'd be a great topic for a book.
Yeah.
What I actually want the federal government to do.
Go away.
But mainly, if they're going to do anything that has to do with interstate transport, standardize the labeling. Standardize labeling. Just labeling. We're not asking for the world. We don't need you to investigate every single product because you're never going to understand it. They're so far behind on that ball.
Yeah, let's just have one THC label.
Let's have one THC logo. What I'll plug, ASTM's international standard symbol. Great, universal, easy to read, bright. Put it on products that contain intoxicating cannabinoids. Ship it across the country. Start using our resources more efficiently. Like, why would we need to grow cannabis in Alaska? There's no power for that. There's no energy. It's cost intensive. So we should be able to produce it in large volumes in centralized distribution hubs like any other CPG product, tested safe up to a standard, a established consensus standard, which the government's required to use. And let's make this a federally legal thing, but they don't need to say, you know what we don't like? We don't like flavors.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ban those too. Oh, maybe we don't like the devices having too bright of a color on there.
Yeah, or we don't want strains named after foods because it might attract children.
Yes.
There goes cookies.
And the funny thing is, it's like, actually, since we legalized it, let's touch on that one real fast as we wrap up, is Once we've made it so you have to ID check to buy this product, it is no longer a manufacturer's problem. It is a law enforcement problem. Stop your kids from selling to other kids. Stop kids from, getting a sketchy adult to go buy things from you. That's a law enforcement problem.
Yeah.
It's not a morality problem. And to wrap this up, and the very last thing, this is to do with the little op-ed I finished up on the New York Times article that came out recently about those 4 people who had issues with cannabis. Well, okay, you 4 people with issues with cannabis, you're 45-year-old adults, and this isn't a physically addicting substance. You can absolutely make the choice to put that in your face and to consume it. Like, I can't do cheese, but I'm not going to go ban pizza because Big Pizza advertises to me, and I need to protect myself from pizza because I'm an adult and I won't eat it.
Well, yeah.
So,
I mean, it's the same with Instagram. Is I could go on Instagram right now and watch a video of a child split in half in the Middle East.
Yes.
No problem. But I want to post a picture of a joint and my account gets flagged.
Yes.
It just doesn't make sense.
In the end of the day, in a free society, you have the right to do with your body whatever it is you want to do, as long as you don't impinge on the freedoms of others while doing it, or as a result of it. And that's the definition of freedom. I want that to be known. Let's stop banning things. Let's stop saying we know what's better. We don't need menthol cigarettes. We should just take those away from you because we don't like how you as an adult are making that choice. No, that's absolutely absurd. Adults like flavors. Adults like candy. I like candy. I'm going to keep eating gummies as my preferred method of ingestion for edibles. It's an adult's choice. So once we have age gated it, and this gets to that intoxicating hemp thing, which we definitely need to have its own episode on.
Yes, multiple probably.
Multiple on that. But again, it's your choice. You assume risk when you buy a beer. You assume risk when you buy a pack of cigarettes. I'm not saying that shouldn't be tested and safe as a product, but it is an assumed risk when you intoxicate yourself as an adult. So anything past that is what I'm going to say very frankly is law enforcement needs to get their priorities right. Go after the bad people.
Yeah.
Stop looking at us as a resource, as a financial base, or as something they need to tweak and control so they don't have to do the work downstream. You guess what, you guys? You have to do work downstream.
Yeah.
It's the same thing you've done with alcohol and tobacco. Exactly.
Unfortunately, it's a lot easier to meet that monthly quota when you can just bust a 16-year-old for having a gram of weed in his car.
Absolutely.
That's just how it goes.
Hey, we're gonna make this thing better. I again go to the end of this. I got hope.
Yeah.
That we're moving in the right direction, and that's more than I can say for many years.
Yeah, we've got reason to be hopeful. I said it in the last episode too. Is just the general sentiment in the public perception of cannabis is so much more positive than it was just a few years ago, and it's only going to get more positive as more people learn about it. And education again remains number one, and maybe that'll be a topic of an upcoming episode here on education, lack thereof surrounding the plant.
It gets us back to that point. It seems to be each of these conversations we're having. It kind of seems to wrap to that. So looks like we got a future episode title there.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Well, and so if anybody asks, this is a educational, informative podcast that has value and shouldn't be removed from platforms because it has to do with weed.
We will appeal. Okay, maybe cut that.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Clear Pod High Potency. We will see you next week. And if you want to stay up to date with everything we're doing, follow us at The Clear Brands on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, wherever. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, Travis. Have a good one, everybody.
So long. This episode of TWAX Talk is brought to you by The Clear Brands. The Clear is TWAX's parent company, and they are known for providing the cleanest, most premium vape pens on the market. We are known for the original line, which has 0.5 gram, 1 gram cartridges, 2 gram cartridges, 0.5 gram and 1 gram all-in-one vapes, as well as a brand new battery that is going to change the way that you vape. So go to theclearbrands.com, check out all the new stuff that we have coming out in 2025, and grab yourself a battery. And if you're in a legal market, find yourself a dispensary and look for The Clear on dispensary shelves.